Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Nobody's head's moving. Okay. We'll call the meeting to order. First thing up is I need a resolution to accept the minutes for March 23rd.
So
Moved
moved.
by Jim Griffith, seconded by Jay Skelly. Any discussion, corrections? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next thing up is Chris Kraling from ASA with a PDR update. And before we start with that, I'd like to express my congratulations to Renee Buplon, which you guys have all seen before. She's done what Chris is doing now. She will be the new executive director when Terry Potasic retires later on this year. So congratulations to Renee. And go ahead, Chris.
All righty. Thanks, Cassie. Thanks, everybody, for having me. Yeah, right off the bat, as Cassie mentioned, Renee Buplon has been named our new incoming executive director when Terry retires later on this fall. I think the target date right now is October 1st or 2nd is the official transition date. So some additional staff changes here. Some of you may have met Ethan Rubenstein. We hired a new project manager in January to help with the staff transition and the current workload. We have a number of projects going on right now. So he was hired in that capacity to help us out. Some of you may have seen recently, about 3-4 weeks ago maybe, that New York State Department of Ag and Markets opened up the next round of PDR grant applications. PDR is Purchase of Development Rights. This particular round, it caught, I think, a lot of people off guard with the pandemic. We weren't sure when it was going to open up, but they made some significant changes to the program. Opening up to different eligibility categories, specifically for vineyards, equine, food security, climate resiliency, source water protection, some of those components. But there still has to be a farm operation associated with any of these applications. And we're trying to figure out and strategize how we're going to move forward. It's not going to be, these applications are not going to be awarded on a competitive basis as they were in past years. Rather, this opportunity was issued as an RFA. So it's basically a first come, first served basis instead of being ranked and competitively against other applications. Also, the districts have changed for this opportunity. It's not aligned with Ag and Markets regions as in past grant opportunities, but rather the economic development region. So our region is now lumped in with Columbia County, as well as Greene, Albany, Schenectady, Saratoga. So it's a little bit of a shift in that regard. The region, each region is allotted $5 million. And then it's, as applications are awarded, that money is just obligated. And then at the end of March next year, any remaining funds for that particular region gets dispersed statewide. So they remove those regional boundaries. So our strategy, since we went through the ranking process and everything for all the pre-applications that we accepted last year at the end of 2019, we received 37 pre-applications in both Washington and Rensselaer County. The committees ranked them, so we decided to honor those rankings, and we're starting at the top and working through those and talking with those landowners to apply for this grant opportunity. So basically, the applications are going to be awarded until there's no more funding. So it's a big shift. And with Ag and Markets, you never know really what changes are going to take place until you actually get the announcement. So we're working through those. We did submit some applications through other grant opportunities through Ag and Markets, through both the second phase of dairy operations transitions, or dairy operations in transition, as well as the farm operations in transition grant opportunities. One of those applications was awarded in Rensselaer County on 525 acres. One application in Whitehall it was given eligible to be award number one, pending an announcement. Where we are right now, because of the pandemic, the Division of Budget isn't obligating funds just yet, but we are in line to have that particular application awarded once we do have some funding obligated for the program. We also submitted some additional applications just in the past few weeks. Some of them were from pre-applications from that previous, that end of 2019 process. The Marnes property in Kingsbury, the Peabody property in Cambridge, and Bentley and the Bentley Farm in White Creek. Those applications have all been submitted, and we are awaiting Ag and Markets review and obligation, or not obligation, but the I guess status change of being able to be eligible for funding. So we're waiting for those. We had some recent PDR closings, one on the Relihan Farm on Route 22 in White Creek that closed in early December, and a portion of Woody Hill Farm also closed earlier this winter. So we continue to make progress on the projects that we have through Ag and Markets, and hope to close some more once funding frees up again from the state. We have some that are in line and ready to close, just waiting for the funding. As far as outreach, events, projects, we're scheduling those as they become available. Obviously, with the pandemic and everything, it's slowed things down, but we are planning some for later on this summer, including our Forever Farmland Supper, our annual dinner that will be at Hand Melon Farm again later on this summer. I think early August is when we're shooting for that. So we will continue to look at the scheduling, and as we can with the pandemic, as things open up, we're going to continue with those outreach efforts. And lastly, with the Cambridge Community Forest, we hope to have this open to the public in the fall. We have currently or just started some bridge work for the access point on that particular property. So I know the contractor has begun some work on the bridge repair work there. And later on this summer, we'll continue with the trail development and creation on the property, and as well as an interim parking area. So that should be up and running hopefully this fall. So that's a very abridged version of everything we have going on. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Chris. We appreciate your update and report.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Next up is the tourism highlights and program and budget. Are you taking the lead on this, Jesse?
Yes, absolutely. I'll do a screen share right now so everybody can see the presentation.
To remind everybody, this is Jesse Tyree of Black Dog. We're contracted with them for our tourism, in case anybody doesn't know.
All right, awesome. Can everybody see what's on my screen? Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, awesome. So I've got this all prepared, and we'll go through it. We can handle some questions towards the end. I just want to say good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much for your involvement in this campaign. The team and I are excited to present today and to walk you through some of the challenges that we faced last year, the ways we adapted, the success we had, and to get your support for our future plans for the tourism program. I really want to start off by introducing some new talent onto our team. Mike Wood. Mike is a lifetime resident of Washington County, and he will be active inside of our campaign in the sense that he will be out there as much as permissible, visiting local businesses, attending events, and being that connection for businesses to have a personal relationship at our agency when they have a specific request. Mike, I'll let you say a couple words real quick.
Sure. Thanks, Jesse. I want to thank Jesse and the Black Dog team. I want to thank Laura as well for this opportunity to be part of this exciting project. The reason that I'm so passionate about it is really because, as Jesse mentioned, I am a lifelong resident of Washington County. Washington County is my home. Ever since my parents yanked me off the mean streets of Glens Falls back when I was in second grade in 1986 and moved me out to the rural countryside of Argyle, New York, life hasn't necessarily been the same. It's a different change of lifestyle for sure, and one that I've enjoyed ever since I've been out here. So that's why really I'm excited to be part of this team and this effort. Who am I? Where am I coming from experience-wise? I spent a dozen years at Six Flags Great Escape, 6 years on either side of the street, my first 6 at the theme park as the marketing manager, and then my final 6 as the director of sales and marketing at the lodge. The reason I am no longer there, it wasn't for lack of loving that property or the industry. I certainly do. My wife, Rebecca Wood, ascended to park president, and I make the joke often that I refuse to have her as my boss at work and at home. So I stepped away and let her take the reins of that wonderful property, and she's doing a fantastic job, especially during these trying times. So, really my background is marketing. It's marketing and hospitality tourism. So really understanding what the industry is, what the trends are, and trying to look for opportunities to continue to drive visitation to a property or to a certain area. I think my experience and my expertise are well suited to continue to do so here. I really think back to some sage advice that I received back when I was first starting on the Great Escape, and it was specific to sales. Is don't have a sale if you're not going to market it. You're going to give money away. It's basically akin to holding up a sign in a dark room. Nobody's going to know about it. I don't necessarily apply that nobody knows about Washington County here, but I think that we can have our efforts to continue to enhance, to amplify what is already going on to promote this wonderful county, all the offerings that we have from businesses to events that are already taking place. And I think that we are well positioned to continue to bolster those efforts.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. All right, here we go into 2020. So last year did present some challenges, as I'm sure everybody here experienced in their own way. And truly, I do hope that things are rebounding for you. Despite these challenges, we faced a decrease in the budget, the I Love New York pulling up funds. We were still able to create value for the local community as well as the business owners. Some highlights from this being repositioning from attracting new people into our community as a focus to becoming a communications team for our local businesses and residents, to have awareness of what is open, pushing area businesses messages that are COVID relating, creating an internal private Facebook group for only business owners. And all of this was done with a pared down set of deliverables. Despite these challenges around budget, the sensitive balance of how to communicate but not attract, we were still able to grow all facets of the campaign goals. Throughout this presentation, we've gleaned comments from social media channels that other people, whether they're businesses, visitors, have placed, and we've just placed those through the book. So here are a few examples of the growth that we've made happen. And this really reflects the community's awareness of the campaign. It shows a 35% growth on social media in terms of people following, a 30% growth in the people who have opted in to receive news and event information from us, and a 15% growth in the pages people are exploring on the website. All of this indicates to us that more people are seeing our messages, more people are asking to receive messages, and when they arrive at the website, they are spending more time exploring more content than they had done in 2018 and 2019. This page specifically is a close-up of some of that social media performance, highlighting the growth. It also highlights the top performing posts and the crowd's favorite. These stats indicate that people are highly focused on landscape, that outdoor experience, and the feeling of freedom and opportunity in a less congested area. These trends also happen to align with the findings with most major travel organizations in regards to consumer demand, notably in the Northeast area of our country around major cities. Email marketing. Due to the need to create a direct stream of communication with our business owners and consumers, we really try to focus on the development of specific emails that apply to each of these audiences. We now have these tools to get messaging right into the business owner's hands, as well as communicate to visitors about things to take into consideration when visiting our area. You can see here the top performing emails. These really do indicate to us that the business community is looking for guidance and as assets on how to grow awareness and get their message out. The best email open rate being a toolkit of COVID resources, and the latter being guides that we created for how they can add their business to the website to keep their listing updated, and the final being best practices for them to use their own digital marketing. On the consumer side, we saw the most success with Maple events, as well as the campaign we ran featuring locally made products, showing off different makers and artisans in our area. Those products are only made in Washington County. Drilling down to the email communications and the list itself, not only is the list growing, but we're also noticing subscribers are from our local area. This really reinforces the day trip concept we discussed in 2018. The increase in these subscribers is a direct result from the contest we ran, as well as people voluntarily signing up to receive news after visiting the website. Really knowing how important relationships are in terms of keeping a pulse on the industry, as well as regional marketing, we've really embraced them and became very involved. From our own agency joining the New York State Tourism Association, to the participation in a new regional tourism program called CAP NY, to other state and regional relationships, these efforts have been key in having other partners in our state share and communicate the messages we are spending time building. A way to think about this is, now that we have a network that repurposes and spreads all of the content that is originating off of our own channels, and those audiences are the exact audiences that we are looking to communicate with. As of right now, we're currently operating with a solid budget of $55,000, which is about a third of the year one budget. Looking ahead at the rest of the year, Laura, Chris, and I have been working a potential budget from a low to a high end. We feel that these options will position us to really gain leverage, build on the successes, and grow to the program with the momentum that we have. Laura, I believe we discussed you going over the finance aspect of this with the committee.
She's muted.
Are you muted? Laura, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
That was your best words ever, and we missed them.
I'll give them again then.
Okay.
As you all know, we only received from I Love New York for for last year's tourism budget about a third of what they normally give us. Even though for the 2021 calendar year, there is I Love New York funding in the state budget, there is so far no indication that we are going to get $1 from I Love New York this year. When we originally put that $50,000 budget in there, it was intended to be matched by I Love New York funding, although we did anticipate there was a possibility it was going to be reduced. So at this point, in order for us to carry forward with the rest of the year, we've only got that $55,000 in the overall budget. So we had always intended to transfer over at least some portion of bed tax revenue. Unfortunately, I did not anticipate having to potentially clean out the bed tax revenue account, which is what this will do. Currently about $81,000 in the bed tax account. Obviously, as we continue to get funding from the Airbnb tax for the rest of this year, we'll be building that back up a little bit. But overall, what we did was we created two budgets, and Jesse will go on to the next one in a minute. The first one is indicative of, if we do nothing but take that $50,000 that's currently coming out of general funds from the county and move $75,000 from the bed tax revenue, this is basically the categories that we would be spending money in for the rest of the year. And also, I want to point out, this budget is, still over $20,000 less than what we had budgeted for last year. But again, it's the only, unless there's more county general funds to it, that's the only access to funding that we have. Then, as suggested by Mr. Griffith at a recent meeting when we were talking about the possibility of accessing the federal stimulus funds for local communities to boost the tourism budget, we created what we're calling the dream budget. So Jesse, you want to move that? Oh, wait, actually, sorry, go back one more step. So I'll go into this in a minute, but you will see on here that we have $3,500 in there for a broadband campaign. As you know, we are being partially funded by Lake George Regional Planning Board to do the broadband survey. But it's still on us to get the message out to the community that, hey, the more county residents and businesses that participate in this survey, the more accurate our data is going to be, the more well-positioned we're going to be to go search for funding to solve the problem. So at a minimum, we put a $3,500 amount in there to spend on marketing for broadband. As a comparison, we spent about $52,000 on the census campaign, which was also managed by Black Dog. In concept, this is somewhat similar in that we're trying to reach out to a Washington County audience and get them to participate in this broadband survey. But obviously, there's no way we're going to have anywhere near $52,000 to spend. So why don't you move to the next slide, Jesse? So taking that total figure of if we had access to that federal stimulus funding and we're targeting a budget of closer to $200,000, these are what the numbers would move up to and the additional things that we would do with the money. So at 200,000, we would be increasing the budget by 145,000 from the current $55,000 budget that's coming out of general funds. And this budget would increase spending on the broadband campaign to $10,000. So Chris Coughlin, who is also on the call, and Jesse and I kind of all worked on some ideas as to initiatives and campaigns and additional things that could be done that would make good use of additional funding. Jesse and Chris may want to talk a little bit more about that, but strategically, I wanted you to be aware this is the difference between the two budgets. At a minimum, if we move money out of the bed tax account and into the tourism account, we're going to have to make a decision as to how, if we're going to do that and how quickly we can do that, because out of that $55,000 budget, we've already spent about 20. So we're going to need funding to get through the rest of the year. I'd also like to point out that, as happened last year, anything that we do in tourism is predicated on current safety protocols and state guidelines. So long as the world continues to open up, this is our best case scenario, and this is what we want to do. If things are looking like continuing with reduced opening and more safety measures are in play, then some of this just logically isn't going to happen because it won't make sense. So I'll let Jesse finish, and then we can go back to a discussion on the budget.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. So I know that these are big decisions for everybody. We feel the future is shining really bright. We have a lot of momentum, and we're eager to keep that going. Looking ahead at trends across the country, we can see that travelers and consumers are looking for trips that are within a few hours of their home. They are looking for Airbnb stays over hotels. They are looking to spend their time in areas that are open, less congested, and offer the ability to create memories focused on experience. Everyone here is aware that our county and the offerings it has are a perfect fit for this type of demand. And with your approval, we're confident we get more eyes on the county and more visitors into businesses. Thank you for the opportunity. So that was the closing I have. This is the information. We're ready to go through anything that anybody would like to.
Brian?
So back on the budgets, we have two different budgets. And I guess my concern is with stimulus money, it's one-time money. What is the 2022 budget that comes behind that? What is in the 2021 with stimulus that disappears to go back, or do you plan on staying at that same level going forward? I'm just trying to understand.
So I'll answer that. So the answer to that question is, at this point, we don't know. We have a timing problem right now. As I'm sure we all know, the federal stimulus program, there's essentially a really lovely portal out there where we are to go and get information about how all the local governments can use this money. Unfortunately, there's no information in it yet, as I'm sure Mr. Henke would tell you. So we are in a position where we are trying to plan for the balance of this year without really understanding whether this programming is going to be eligible for stimulus funding, and B, if so, at what point it would be available. So my, I guess, suggestion at this point is that we move forward with moving over the bed tax revenue so that we have a minimum budget in place for the year. And then any of the additional things, which, by the way, there's one more thing that we did not add to this list, but coming up fairly quickly, we're going to have to identify how we take care of that. And that is ADA compliance on the tourism website. We currently have some minimal thresholds of ADA compliance, but if we make it fully compliant with ADA law, as I understand, the county's website is being upgraded at the end of this year. We're going to have to do something similar to the tourism website, and that will require some budget as well. But in terms of whether this budget applies to next year, again, in the state budget, and it's a little complicated because the state budget that was just passed in April of this year did include full funding for I Love New York. That funding is what we would be accessing in January of 2021. Their typical process is we fill out all of their forms, and then we generally receive the money in February or March. So at this point, I'm anticipating that our contribution from I Love New York will be similar to what it typically has been, which is about $60,000. But again, that it's in the state budget. It was also in the state budget last year, and it doesn't look like we're going to see it. So next year's budget would comprise whatever we decide to put in from county general funds, whatever is matched by I Love New York, and then whatever we decide is appropriate, as also decided by the county committee that's working on, obviously everybody and their brother has ideas as to how we might spend that stimulus funding, but we have a broad brush statement that says tourism programming is eligible. Obviously, I would never recommend that we start spending money based on the potential to get funding for this. We would not want to spend a dime until we were sure that it was eligible and all of the approvals were in place to do it. This was simply meant to show you the kinds of things that we could do if that funding was there. Did that answer your question?
Right?
Yeah, so it's your belief right now that I Love New York funding will not come through at all, or it will just come through at a later date possibly?
So I can't say that it's 100% off the table that we will have I Love New York funding for the year 2020, but it's looking very unlikely.
Okay, because if it was likely, I was wondering if we could do the budget with funding that you were talking about, and do it like a quarterly. It got moved quarterly. So if I Love New York came on board, we would quit taking from the money from the heads and beds and and kind of preserve some of that. But whatever, I'm not opposed to either. I'm just trying to look forward to see how next year is going to fit in with whatever we do this year.
I would say that next year will be a very different proposition, assuming that we do in fact get access to that I Love New York money. Again, I can only tell you it was in the budget to be used for 2020, but we have zero indication. All of the forms, all of the documents, all of the discussions at tourism associations basically says it's just not likely to happen, and it wouldn't make sense for the state to hand every county tourism funding at the end of the year that it's funding. I mean, you normally see that at the beginning of the year. So if we haven't gotten any indication by now that we're likely to see it, again, it's just one more sign that we are not likely to get anything from I Love New York this year. But for 2020, wait, what year is it? 2021? Sorry, for 2022. I lost track. For 2022, we typically know in January what the amounts allocated to the county will be. Although we get an indication in late December of what the ballpark number is.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Brian, Brian, this is a question for you. Are you concerned on, kind of what the return on investment would be if we spent 155 versus 200,000 going into next year to kind of gauge what that number spent should be, or are you looking for that as an underlying question?
I was looking to see if there was one-time monies that were in there, if we were setting a new level at 200, or is the level more in the 130 to 150 level going forward? I'm just trying to get my hands around that at this point.
I understand. You're just trying to set a base on what you think should be an annual spend. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I will comment that I said last year at budget time that my overall goal as we grow bed tax revenue is to continually reduce dependency on county general funds. So if we, for example, used a $200,000 budget for the next 2 or 3 years, that would only be because we were able to because of available stimulus funding, or all of a sudden we got millions of dollars in Airbnb revenue. But long term, what I had originally wanted to do was to continue to bank the Airbnb money so that we could grow that account and then over time reduce dependency on county general funds. Unfortunately, with zero I Love New York contribution, either we shut down tourism for the rest of the year because with $50,000, we're not going to make it through the year, or we move bed tax money over.
Jim?
I had a question in regards to, Jesse, can you go, I had a question in regards to geofencing. Are we actively geofencing anywhere? So specifically, I look at like the rest stops. We talk about being a day trip for, Saratoga, Warren County. Is there a possibility to do geofencing at the rest stops at exit 9 and exit 18? We can see, if we geofence there, people, my point is that, those places have brochures and stuff, but 9 times out of 10, the people staying there waiting for their significant other or their kids to come out of the bathroom are staring at their phone, not staring at the brochure. So I think there's a great opportunity there to geofence at those rest stops and be able to promote, something that's local to them on the southern tier and the northern tier. It's also a possibility to geofence. We were looking at the subscribers. A lot of our subscribers were focused on New York State subscribers. I think we're missing an opportunity with our eastern port of Washington County, with our Vermont subscribers. There's an opportunity there with we could geofence the Fairhaven and the Bennington Welcome Centers in Vermont. So I didn't know if you had geofencing in the marketing strategy. I believe it's in the marketing strategy or possibly social media. I didn't know if we were geofencing or if that was part of the strategy.
Yes. So when we run social paid campaigns, we're generally targeting a specific geographic area for them to appear in. We have not targeted, say, the areas that you are referencing. We're more targeting either the county perimeter in general or specific areas inside the county. One of the first years, we really tried to glean a lot of the traffic outside of the county in, but as of last year, the intention was to not do that and keep things internal. So that's certainly a possibility, and it's certainly doable. It would really have no impact on our practices. More, we would utilize some of that paid media for that specific goal.
So Jimmy, I can also add to that. As it happens, the idea of geofencing is something that has been discussed at the sort of I Love New York and the state level. So there is a company out of Canada called Rove Marketing that specifically does geofencing. All of the tourism regions or all of the counties in our tourism region, and I'm not sure what the final number would be, but I would say probably about half of those in the state participated in a sort of a pilot of a geofencing project. So we actually paid to participate this. Literally, it was like in December of last year, where each county that participated paid a fee to join. We selected 10 specific spots to geofence. And then in addition to that, we will have a compilation of county-wide data. We are literally due to get the results of that tomorrow. And in fact, we were supposed to get it earlier, but apparently they got so many hundreds of thousands of data points, they couldn't get it all mapped. And so they delayed them by about a month. So if this goes well, it is something that maybe we can consider continuing to participate in, or the program changes, but we will actually have some of that data tomorrow.
Awesome. Cassie, I have one more question.
Go right ahead.
Okay, marketing collateral, photos, videos. I've been trying to do some research on, photos and for our county park. Our county parks, there's horrible pictures out there. It's a great, this is what we promote is the county parks. We don't have anything that's great or looks good, that's promotable. No pictures, no sunsets going down over Hewitt's Landing, no morning sunrises at Lauderdale. There's just, I think there needs to be, if you can focus, that's one thing from the county perspective. I also think, utilizing, we do a good job, borrowing other people's social media, especially around the fair time. But I think if we're going to put some money into some photos and videos, I think we need to focus on the county assets, which are not only the fairgrounds, but also the parks too.
Absolutely. When we go to do those photo shoots, we can make sure that they're scheduled as part of the locations. We actually have a video shoot with a videography company that does really great work. That shoot will be starting on the 24th, and they'll be going from the north all the way down to the south. They've got 3 or 4 locations and everything in between to capture. So that's great, James. Thank you. I'll add that to our list. And again, this is something that doesn't affect finances. It's subject matter to focus on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else have any other questions? I can only see 4 or 5 people, so if you have a question, just speak up.
Chairman, Cassie, this is Sue Clary. I'm not on this committee, but I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It's interesting. If any of you have watched the Old Homestead Hemp TikTok series, okay, it's engaging, it has life, it brings people back. And I think she's up to 23 million watches. And the concept of how she did that engaged the public, and more people are joining daily. Her internet sales have increased remarkably. And that's all Washington County tourism and sales tax money. And so I kind of like that energy that she promotes. And I'd love to see some of that energy into this campaign.
Awesome. Iris is actually a client of ours. We built her entire brand, her website, and the communication. So I'm familiar with the campaign on TikTok that you're speaking of. Yeah. Inside of our media buying budget, it's a lot more than it is the prior year. For example, you can see the media purchasing is about $13,000 here on some of these things. If it was able to be flipped up into the 31, Chris has some plans where we would hire those individuals at a flat, like per diem. They would be developing content and creating content. I had a call yesterday with somebody who's very popular on social media, but more what she is she's young. She has a lot of energy. She has a great group of people that are around her. And I had a discussion on her for a small fee. Could we pay you to spend the day, experience everything, and then to capture that in media? It's a balance of that professional things that James is asking about and that user-generated content that will really create authenticity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more question, if that's okay. In Salem, we go back and forth between trying to get the Wi-Fi to work or broadband to work to trying to get our cell phones to work. And so it's a constant battle. We're always talking broadband, but I'm not so sure that we're talking cellular coverage, and that's just as important. And it's not 90, the state says it's 98%. We all have it. We all know that we have it sometimes, and a lot of times we don't have it. I don't know how we think about increasing better cell phone coverage in Washington County, but I think it's something that goes well with, if you're gonna geofence, you gotta have a phone that works. So I don't know, Laura, I don't know if that's something that should be included in this budget or how we would do it. And you've probably already done it 100 times, but just my 2 cents.
I'll put it on my list.
I know. Thank you. I'm sorry.
That's also something we did take into consideration. Some of this marketing collateral, we're aware that there's the cheese tour, the maple tour, there's all of these things, but there's also the issue of cell phone data and cell phone usage. So we thought it would be a good idea. There's really never been any print collateral created since we began this campaign. I think that if we can create some print collateral that's sort of evergreen and alludes to things, that's material that can be placed and distributed in centers, provided to people along these routes, and carried around to last a bit longer.
Yeah, just let me comment quickly on that. We did, the last print collateral we did were the Washington County tourism maps. They need updating. I do know that they're popular, but it also cost us about 15 grand to print them last time. So what we're talking about is trying to come up with something that's not as expensive to print, but still, gives you the mindfulness of Washington County. And then at some point, when we've got the budget, potentially redo those maps.
Okay, next I have Brian and then Jim.
Yeah, so a lot of cell phone usage is, of course, related to cell phones being allowed to be used in certain areas. And I think as broadband connects our towers, we have a lot of towers. I know the ones in Hebron aren't connected with fiber optic. As they get hooked with fiber optic, it should bring the companies that won't go there without fiber optic on. So AT&T and T-Mobile are actually both on the Presbytery Tower, and the reason being, T-Mobile came on once they realized fiber optic was coming. AT&T didn't mind coming when it was just copper wire. Verizon won't come there at all. So a lot of these things will take care of themselves in due time as we get them hooked. And so those are things to be cognizant of, that those things are going to change, and we're going to have more opportunity as we go along. And when we print a map, you brought to my mind, just traveling the last week or two, there's a lot of places now when you go in a restaurant, you just scan your phone and you get the menu. Maybe there's a way to have a map with certain things on the outside that they can scan. So even if they have the paper, they could just scan that and see exactly what you're talking about, what's available at that location, instead of having to print everything about it. And maybe that would cut down on printing costs too, and get a lot more information to the user. So, just little things like that I've noticed just in my travels.
Thank you.
Jimmy?
Brian, that was a good idea. QR codes, really, really smart. So, I'm a junkie for grabbing these flyers when I travel. I didn't get to be there today, but one of the ones, and I'm sure you've seen it, Jesse, probably one that I think is like the smartest one, is this Visit Adirondacks. It's literally 4 pages, and it has 1 page for each season. I think it's the smartest piece that's come out in the last couple of years. I Love New York actually does it. But I'm glad to see that you're adding print to the budget. We haven't had it in a couple of years, and I think it's important, so thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, and we have received quite a few emails coming in from the website. These are people from all across the country asking, can you send me something? And unfortunately, the answer, we've directed them towards other channels to receive that information, but we don't necessarily have anything. The 15,000 number, this is doable for a small percentage of that, right? We don't need a huge wide format map, and we don't need 1,000 of them. We design something, we make it, we print runs, and then it's reprints. I think it's a very attainable goal to get these things.
And if you do that with a QR code, that's you're perfect right there. Somebody asks you to send them something, you just send them the QR code back in an email form, and it pops open in the PDF for them. So.
Yep, that'd be awesome.
You're making me feel old, Jim, when everything is QDR, PS, whatever. I guess we're trying to attract the younger generation.
I think I get the letters out of order, and they wouldn't know what I was talking about. So I think I would move both budgets to finance because we might have a lot more information between now and then. We know it's coming sometime, so I don't think there's a reason to move just one and not the other. Is that accurate, Laura, or would you rather I just move the lower one?
So as I said, we've spent about, what did I say, about 20,000 to date. That does not include the April invoice. That's going to be somewhere between 5 and 10, I should imagine. So we're going to run out of the ability to pay Black Dog probably by May or June, something like that. So we'll need to have something moved because it's got to go to finance and then to full board. So I just want to make sure that I don't starve Black Dog.
Okay, so I'll move both to finance, and then at finance we can sort out which one we want to go through with according to what kind of rules and regulations we have by then, unless nobody wants to second that and would rather just pick one.
Jim?
I'll second that. And then can we go into dialogue?
Yes. Motion by Brian, seconded by
Okay.
Jim. Discussion.
All right, so can we move money from the Airbnb right now to help Laura and tourism be able to continue to pay Black Dog while these go to finance?
I think we still have to go through
Still have to
finance.
go finance to
It
make
still has to go
Let's
to finance and then the full
Full
board
board.
with the,
Okay.
so if we we can still make that resolution either now or after the budget discussion and finance. But either way, we'll make sure there's money there, hopefully by May.
So the target would
Matt?
be to, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the target would be to get resolution at full board at the May board meeting to decide what we're moving or how much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Further discussion, Matt?
Just so to clarify, this is the calendar 2021 budget, the current year we're in.
Yes.
Correct.
What we're going to talk about is how much money we're moving out of the bed tax to cover parts of this budget, and how much we're moving out of general fund that either was or wasn't budgeted to cover this budget, right?
Her question, the
no.
second one at the bottom, if you read this up right now, to be funded by a portion of the federal stimulus funding. That's a discussion I thought we might want to have if we have any guidance by then. Basically, if we have no guidance by then, I think that discussion is probably off the table. But if we had guidance and we wanted to discuss it, I wanted to be able to discuss it, was all.
Yeah, but will we be talking about?
I don't think we were talking about moving general fund money, we're just moving bed tax money, I believe.
Okay.
Is that right, Laura?
Yeah, so Matt, the idea would be if we don't know enough about what's happening with stimulus funding to be able to make a decision as to whether these proposed items are eligible, then the goal would be to move the bed tax money out. if we have enough information from stimulus money, first of all, I'll say I am not asking for money to be moved out of general fund that would never be reimbursed. But the question to Al would be, if we are ultimately looking to get reimbursed by that stimulus funding, what would the cash flow of that be? Would it come out of general fund into a tourism fund, then to be reimbursed by stimulus? I don't know how that would work, but what I am saying is I am not looking for unreimbursable general fund money. It's either we live with what we have in bed tax, or we can spend more understanding it's going to be reimbursed.
Do you have anything to add, Al?
Probably more at finance, we'll know more, but it won't be a reimbursement, Laura. The stimulus money is going to be front loaded. So how we distribute it's going to depend on how the guidance comes out.
Right.
It might have to be a distribution directly to Black Dog, but we'll see how that rolls out. And as far as not starving Black Dog, if there's a resolution that's going to come out of the May finance, you could have a voucher submitted for the May board meeting, so that they're not waiting another 30 days for their payment. So that way, if it passes the board the third Friday in May, they'll get a check that following Monday, rather than waiting a whole nother 30 days for a check. So you can do a voucher with the resolution pending.
Okay.
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 So to clarify, finance is 3 weeks away. It's probably unlikely we're going to get some detailed guidance from the feds in the next 3 weeks.
No, they're gonna restore the I Love New York money by then.
You think so? So realistically, we were talking about moving bed tax money in order to cover what we're talking about doing, right? I just want to get it clarified what we're going to be talking about. All right.
So, and then we add on to the dream wish that New York will send us to our I Love New York money, and the federal government will tell us we can spend.
What you're saying is that we have our act together, the feds don't, and the state doesn't, but we do.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I want to clarify.
That's correct.
I guess my question.
That's a good way to put it.
Yep.
Hey, Al, we heard about reconciliation on our money. Have we seen reconciliations so far at the county level on last year's money as of March 31st? Remember, that was the big spiel, but I don't know that we've seen that. We've heard about it, but I don't know if we've actually seen money.
Yeah, a lot of our programs have already been restored their 15%.
Okay. So that's already, but nothing came I Love New York at all is what you're saying?
No, sir.
Okay.
Well, I think that when Laura and I looked at what they paid us, I think it ended up being the net 5%, correct, Laura?
So it's a little bit odd because of calendar year versus fiscal year. So
Yep.
the April of 2021 state budget funds the 2022 calendar year tourism program. So any funds that come in during 2021 would have been approved by the state budget in 2020. Normally, that process is we get a bunch of forms to fill out in January. They tell us what our approximate numbers are going to be and then deposit the money in an account by March. So the funding was included in the state budget in April of 2020. But again, we have no indication that they are actually going to distribute that money to us.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Are we ready to vote? All in
Aye.
favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay. What's next, Laura?
I just have a couple of other updates for you. One on the broadband project. The inventory of assets, which is where ECC actually has physical people out on the ground reading the tags on all of the poles across the county to determine what providers have what equipment there to assist us in the mapping effort. So if anybody in your communities get any questions from people like, what are these guys in this car doing, hanging out in the fields, reading polls? That's what they're doing. We are hoping to get the actual survey launched where people can log on, answer questions, do speed tests if they actually do have broadband, probably sometime in late May. The target is still to try and finish the program and get enough information out so that we have a better understanding of where our gaps are and what financing sources might fill them, probably by late fall. One of the broadband sources that unless they delay the application, which USDA has done before, is USDA Reconnect. That's typically due in June. I don't think we're going to have enough information to potentially apply for that funding, but if they delay it, there's some possibility we might be able to do something in this year. But just wanted to let everybody know that we are on track on the schedule. We got started a little bit late, but once we got started, we are still moving forward, and we will actually hopefully have some results that will allow us to get funding to get more service out there. Any questions on that?
I don't see any.
So the only other thing that I have, just to give you a brief update on, is the septic program. You heard at the full board meeting on Friday. When we discussed this at Ag Planning, I believe it was in February, we were waiting for DEC to in fact confirm that the program was going to be funded, which is why it was never moved off to finance. What happened was DEC put out a press release last weekend with my name in it that said, Washington County has lots of septic system money, call Laura. So I started getting dozens of emails. They went to codes, they went to Corinne over at Soil and Water. And unfortunately there was insufficient information. So, there's a very limited eligibility. It's within 250-foot buffer of Lake Cosayuna or Lake George only. So what has now happened is after the resolution passed on Friday, our chairman signed the contract. We are waiting for EFC to countersign so that we have a fully executed document. Once that happens, Corinna will put out a press release clarifying who's eligible, what the process will be, and how it will work. But we're at this point, anybody who makes inquiries, until we get that contract countersigned, we can't move forward with the program, but hopefully it won't take EFC too long. And that's all I have.
Okay. I'll also add that everybody wants to check their email, that Brian Gilchrist couldn't be here today, but he sent the Cornell Cooperative Extension report through the email. So anybody can review that and bring questions to next month or send them to Brian if you have them. Next up is the youth hunting local law, and I believe we're going to go to Bob Henke for that.
We are?
Yep, we are. I just decided.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that we had talked about this in a committee meeting, because I didn't want to completely, bypass the committee. We did pass it to set up the public hearing at the board meeting, just to get in under DEC's June 1st deadline for publication in the guide, so we didn't drive all our town clerks crazy answering questions. It is basically a measure to let the kids that now can hunt small game to also hunt big game. Big game in the sense of deer, not bear. They're restricted there. They can only hunt deer. They have to have a adult in a licensed adult in physical presence of them. They have to be able to touch them. You have to be able to physically control them while they're doing it. They have to be wearing blaze orange at the time, and they cannot hunt from a tree stand. There was a lovely letter to the editor in the New York Times about it, talking about how incredibly dangerous the kids were, and it was a complete, absolute pack of lies, because the statistics do not bear that out at all. Actually, it's the younger hunters are our safest group of hunters. I see nothing wrong with it, and I hope that every county will pass it. Beyond that,
anybody wants some of the accident statistics for this year or in the past, I can give you some. There were 3 accidents with kids under 15 this year. 2 of them involved BB guns where they ricocheted a BB bag and hit themselves, and there were no injuries. I don't know why on earth they were reported as hunting accidents, but that's the level of seriousness that we're dealing with. So beyond that, I'd answer any questions if I can, but I just think it's something we ought to be strongly in support of. And in terms of tourism, it's probably, we do have a lot of people coming into the county, during hunting seasons and things. So it's probably a very good thing from that aspect. It's a good thing in terms of dealing with young people. I think the more that we're mentoring young people, the better. We're getting away from that. We're starting to do a lot of training on the computer and this sort of thing. This isn't actually hands-on with your parents. Mentoring, I think we ought to be fostering as much as we can. How's that?
So I can't resist this, Bob, but apparently what you're saying is the mom in A Christmas Story was right. You can put your eye out with that.
No, actually, they both put their ankles out with it. So,
Bob,
and there was no injury in either. No injury in either case.
Bob, I just want to clarify. They were hunting squirrels.
Hunting squirrels in the backyard at the bird feeders, I believe, is how
It's what the article said.
And neither one had a license. Squirrels too.
I also think this is a wonderful idea. We have a fantastic program in this county. I don't even know when it started. Must have been a long time ago. Bob said he used to teach it. But we have a 4-H hunting shooter sports program within 4-H that's been going on a long time. Both my son and my grandson have been through it, but it is a very well done program, and this only adds to, it's a very popular program. So this is another nice step to move on from that.
And it also lets kids participate in that at a younger age too, so.
Any other, Matt?
It's a local law, so we just have a public hearing, we just wait till the public hearing is over, then there's a motion. Does the motion have to come from here to get to after the public hearing? What's the mechanics here?
It's already been set. So I think Bob's kind of doing an ex post facto update on the law before you get to the public hearing, but you set the public hearing at the last meeting. So you wouldn't lose that month. So what you would do is after the public hearing, consider the local law at the full board meeting. And then if you pass it, a copy goes down to DEC to notify them. We file it with the Secretary of State and you're in. It's an opt-in law, so we have to opt into it.
So I think the bottom line is that we don't have to do anything. I don't think we need a resolution out of here to do that.
All right, that's all I was asking.
Sam?
Yeah, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Vice Chairman Hanke and Supervisor Griffiths for their effort forwarding this thing because of the June 1st date that we had. If they hadn't got it completed prior to that, so we could go to the last board meeting we had, the full board meeting, we wouldn't have been able to deal with this now and be able to address it, and we'd have missed the whole cycle. So thank you for stepping up and taking care of that in as rapid a manner as you did. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Do I have any other to come before the committee?
Actually, Cassie, one quick thing. So
Okay.
it occurs to me, we introduced Jesse and Michael at the beginning of the meeting, but we never introduced Chris and Alexis. Chris is an account manager who kind of works with us on creative programming, and Alexis is the creative writer behind all of our social media programs, and she's also a Greenwich resident by happenstance. So anyway, it just occurred to me that they've sat through the entire meeting and we never actually introduced them. They are part of the team as well.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we have any other? Then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.
See, Dave, that's the way to do it. She just.